Hey everyone, welcome to the Elite Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Popple, along my co-host, William McClelland. How's it going today, Will?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. Busy. What's up?
Oh man, no, I thought today would be a great topic to talk about this, considering I helped you move a few things in your new house today.
Yeah.
So, so I thought this was a good one because you actually just kind of went through this in yourself as far as figuring out what made more sense for you right now at the time and gave you the flexibility. So, with rates high, insurance up, affordability in a flux, should people rent or own in 2026? What
Yeah,
you
man.
what
I
you think?
think,
What made more sense? What made more sense for you right now?
yeah. So I think it's kind of a twofold for me. I was going to buy another place, and then there's a couple hiccups. And I got down to a time crunch, and I was able to find a place like double the size, from where I was at. And I was able to rent one for pretty much the same price that I'm going to be able to rent my current place out at. So it's kind of net zero, but to get double the size home and then not have any of the maintenance costs. Don't have to do landscaping, don't have to keep up with the roof, with the HVAC, with all the other things. Like, I'd rather have smaller rentals, honestly, because they come with smaller things that break. So going from what I was at, to a 2,500 square foot home, and then not having the headaches tied down to it and getting a pretty good deal. I don't know, man. I feel like it's a tough market to be in.
But I think you should point out. I think you should point out that you were gonna end up buying a home, but then once you kind of realized that all the money you were gonna have to bring to the table, because you'd recently, since you had bought your those other homes so recently,
Yeah.
they weren't letting you just go straight into like another conventional like normal. You were gonna have to end up bring what you're gonna bring like 30%, right?
30% to the table. And then when
Yeah,
it was all said and done, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I'm going to have to
let's hit those numbers just so people understand, because I think the house you're in now that you rented it and the house you were going to move into are very, very comparable as far as
almost identical. Yeah.
size and square feet. But how much cash were you going to have to bring to the table and for if you bought the home with the 30% now?
Yeah. I mean, we've talked about this before. There's people have a stigma on however they want to with production builders, but they are buying rates down heavily. So if we're going to jump into the numbers, the deal was extremely attractive because I was getting a 3.75% rate. So that was great. The issue to make that happen is I was going to have to bring like $129,000 to the table, right?
Exactly. 100 that you're going to just put in a home that you're going to live in. So that's 120,000 that you're not making money on because you're staying there. And and then what would your monthly payment have been after bringing that 120?
Yeah, so the payment would have been fine. All tax, title, everything was like right at 17. It was like 17 and change.
Okay. Yeah. Let's round it.
But I had to bring 120,000, 130 grand.
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. Let's just round it to 18. So it's clean, easy. Yeah. And so 1,800. So for $400 more a month, you don't have to bring the 120,000 to the table. Nope. And you don't have to worry about any major things that go wrong, because if the water heater goes out, the air conditioner goes out, there's an electrical problem, that's not your problem, so
right.
So it's kind of like, I want to point out there because like I do think there's right now it's an interesting time. I do think for a lot of people it makes more sense to rent than to buy, especially if someone's financially savvy like you are, because I'm not going to put all your business out there because we talk a lot, but if someone takes 120,000, just puts it in the straight S&P and gets just an average S&P return, you're better off really putting it in there.
Oh yeah, I know. For me, there was like
the rent.
Whenever it came down to that, for
Yeah.
our this next year, I would have been holding up so much capital for future deals
Well,
that allow us to make more money.
let's
Yeah,
just say you live in that house for 3 years, and
right,
let's just call it that. Let's say they raise the rent $100 a year, which I don't think they're going to. But
right.
let's just say they do. You'd be out 4,800 this year, and then you'd be out was that $6,000 next year, and then 7,200 the year after that. So what's 13? We'll just call about 18, 19,000 added together since I'm doing it quick. That's the total money out versus you would have been paying, I guess, 1,800 times 36, so round that, to two grand times 36.
Yeah.
Dude, it's just like it's just kind of once you start breaking down the numbers, it's really kind of crazy.
Right. 72,000 plus I'm out 130 grand, right? And then that payment, yeah, a very small, a minute amount actually goes to principal, right? It's all interest, even at a great rate. But yeah, for me right now, I actually had two people like, why, if you have other houses, why are you renting one? So this was like a great episode to talk about it because
Yeah.
when I started breaking the numbers down, I actually called Sam, and this is the type of relationship that we have. And I was like, hey man, this just I can't make this make sense anymore. Like it seemed like it was a slam dunk deal. But now we're getting to the closing tables, we're a week out and it just doesn't make sense to make this work. Like, I think I might rent something. And then, we were talking about it, about just staying where I was at. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to just try and run some numbers and I'm just going to scour the internet, which I did for like, I don't know, 72 or 96 hours. I like was going crazy. And then I found a couple.
You were definitely like 3 or 4 days straight.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, of going hard on it. Because I remember we kept talking because we were also trying to figure out the other situation of maybe if we refinance some rentals into other ways, then you'd be able to close the loan. And just kind of throw this out there, it's like Will's situation was a little bit unique. But if someone has a low enough down payment and they're getting enough builder incentives where they're not having to bring any cash to the table, and then their monthly payment would be lower than rent, by all means, you should probably buy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should probably buy. But if depending on the amount of down payment that you're gonna have to bring out of pocket, that's when you got to start kind of analyzing, like, how long do you really want to live there?
Sure.
Is it a forever home? Is this the town you want to stay in?
Because you have a lot of money tied up.
Right. And like Will personally has a young family. He's has a son on the way. Little Willie should hopefully be here in about a month. So so he, like I said, so he needed a place that was going to be suitable for him and his beautiful fiance and his new child. And so, like I said, I thought this was a good episode to kind of break it down. And I wanted to use a real life example of my friend here as like the kind of the intro to it, because I thought those were some, I knew all the numbers I thought there were some cool numbers, but
it was interesting. And just to break this down further, since we're talking about it, we're always there. Someone's going to pick something out of this episode or it might hit with other people. We did a whole bunch of stuff. I was going to DSCR my rental, like my houses that I have, and we were going to put them as rentals. And that was an option. But then when it came down to it, the way I previously purchased these were builder incentive buy down rates. And so I'm getting these rates. For example, this townhome that I'm in currently right now, what's really crazy about it is I had a 2.5% interest with an additional 2-1 buy down. So I'm locked in at 4.5% after year 3. So this is my first year here. So I'm at 2.5%. Next year it goes to 3.5%. And then every year after that, it's locked in at 4.5%. There's no DSCR loan in that can even touch that. The way it cash flows currently is great. And so when we were breaking it down for us to get it into a DSCR and to make it a rental, it was going to, one, go up in the price for principal and interest. And two, I was going to have to bring money to the closing table on something that I have a lot of equity in. And
Right.
then, yeah, so then it was like a snowball effect of, okay, well, if that doesn't work, because I don't want to leave a gap in the story. They're like, well, why are you having to bring $130,000 to the closing table? Well, I wasn't. I was going to use another builder incentive with 5% down, which would have been, 20, 25,000, 30,000, whatever it was. And that was easy. But then when it goes a six-figure difference on that, it
Right.
kind of changed my perspective. And I was talking to Sam. I'm like, hey, we could do a lot more money, or we could do a lot more things with this money, as opposed to just like putting it in this house that I'm probably going to move out next year again. So
Exactly. No, and I mean, and if you would have got it at 5% down, it most likely would have made sense for you to move
yeah.
because
Oh,
you know,
I would have done it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because your cash to the table you'd probably brought after the builder incentives would probably been under $10,000. And so using
Right.
that original situation that I brought up at the beginning of the show when I was breaking down the years that the 10,000 up front stretched over the monthly payments, he would then be in his living situation probably a little less than the current 2,200 a month rent. But outside of that, when it was going to go over it, and then you got to bring the money to the table, it just didn't make sense. But
Yeah.
man, so kind of a market snapshot of what's going on. So interest rates have been higher. We started to see them come down a little bit, but definitely been a whole lot higher in the last 2 years than they were the 3 years before that. And then especially in Florida. I know Texas has had some issues, and then California had definitely has been it's been big news on their insurance issues. Just insurance in all these different areas has been high. And then on top of that, limited inventory is keeping prices high despite the demand softening. So yeah, I mean that's kind of like just high. So going in now, the case for renting right now, the pros of renting and the
Yeah.
cons.
I
Why don't,
definitely want
why
to go
don't
on
you why don't you
the
go over
pros
the pros because you decided to rent this year. So what are the pros of renting,
yeah.
Will?
And honestly, like I'm renting a really large home. It was it's
Oh,
something
it's huge. Yeah,
it's
it's like
some
twice as big as the townhouse.
yeah, it's something abnormal. So I was able to really scour the internet to make sure I was making a good choice. And just for all the listeners here, I found four identical homes because I went again. And you guys know this, I worked in production building, so I can leverage some of those things. So I
Yeah.
found the exact same home that was for rent that was
And
being
well, let
built.
me just add a thing there for everybody who's not as doesn't know the industry as well as you. So, guys,
Oh,
what he's
sorry.
talking about, yeah, is because Will has a major expert background. I've came in a little more novice, so I wanted to point something out that I picked on him. Is basically what he's talking about is if you see a big builder like Lennar, D.R. Horton, and some of the guys like that, they don't build a different home every time. They build the same
Right.
home over and over and over again.
Just
So
in different neighborhoods.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And usually in any kind of neighborhood you go in, that's one of their neighborhoods. It's usually like, we'll just call them plan A, B, C, and D. You got an A
Right.
house, a B house, a C house, a D house, an A house, a B house, a C house, a D house,
Exactly.
on and on. And so Will, because of his, background of, working for some of these big guys, he knows that. And so what he did, not to tell the whole story, but he basically found the great house that he liked and found all those for rent within a mile.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm gonna let you take it over from there, but I just wanted to point out the same houses by those guys, and how they're looking at it.
Yeah, so like Sam was saying, I just kind of I found a couple of necessities that we needed, and then I had already had in my mind because again I was only 1 week out from the closing table, so I wanted something very similar. So it was a larger home. That one happened to be 5 bedrooms, 3 bath, but trying to find a 5 bedroom rental is like you're not getting anything under 2750. Like they're really expensive. And so then I was like, well, let me find a couple necessities. I broke it down and I found a trend for a 4 bedroom, 3 bath in a certain area of Pensacola. So it's in the northwest side in Beulah, where there's a lot of land and there are a lot of neighborhoods, all new, but they're building the same thing, like Sam said, the same plan over and over again. Well, I took that. I wrote all these addresses down. I went and rode right past them, took photos of them. I called all of the listing agents or property managers that were on them. I ended up narrowing down to 4 identical homes. It's called the Destin floor plan. Very nice floor plan, 3-car garage, 4-bedroom, 3-bath. And I said, hey, there's 3 other identical listings. The least amount of days listed is 66. And your listing, and this was for one specific, has been on for 88 days. I'm going to call the other 3. But this is where I feel like the market rent is strong. I also feel comfortable, and I worked at D.R. Horton, so I know the builder incentives. So I know their payment is probably hovering here. I want them to make this cash flow positive. And I left it at that. I wasn't trying to get a crazy deal. I was trying to get a deal because I think they were all pushing it a little too high.
They were all trying to push the market,
Yeah, they were trying to push the market. But the problem is they were all.
We don't blame them. We do the same thing on our side.
Yeah. And what I had noticed is that they were all sitting for a really long time. It checked all the boxes. So I told them, and I was very upfront. I said, hey, I'm going to call the other 3 listings. There's 4, and these are all identical, and 2 happen to be 2 homes away from each other for rent. It was like, instead of going A, B, C, D, it was A, B, A again, so they're like right there. So it was like super competitive with 2 different listing agents with big signs up front. And I pretty much said like, hey, I think market rent's here. And of the 4, I only got 2 callbacks. Callbacks, I connected with all of them, but only 2 callbacks of saying, hey, we can work and negotiate this down. And then I got 1 more, I followed back up. I actually rented this place. Sam saw I got this place sight unseen because I just drove past them on the outside, took the pictures as is online. I built this floor plan, so I knew what it looked like. I knew it was a nice one. And so I was
probably an edge that none of you guys are going to have. But
but what you could do is you can find a floor plan. You can go to a new construction neighborhood, if it's D.R. Horton, if it's Lennar, if it's Veranda, and go to their model home. Find a rental of the model home, because when you walk into the model home, it'll say plan blank, whatever the plan is. So that's just something that if you guys aren't feeling comfortable for this next year of buying, that's something that you could use that as an edge. But yeah, long story short, we negotiated down to the price that I felt very comfortable with and happy with, and Sam let you guys know what that was. And it was only a couple $100 more than what I was going to be paying, but being out $130,000.
Right.
So
and I think, like I said, I mean, for your situation, makes total sense, because why pay $130K up front to get a $400 a month discount?
Right.
You know, like when you say it like that, it just really doesn't even.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Now, I mean, now we're harping pretty hard on not owning, but some cons. Yeah. I'll go ahead and go over some cons.
Go over cons, because I actually feel I still feel weird, and I had 2 people say like, "Well, why are you renting something when you have other rentals?" So go over the cons, because I'm actually still feeling it.
And I got an answer. I got an answer for that. But the cons, okay, you're building someone else's equity.
Yeah.
You got limited control over your own space. It's not like you can move walls in there. And then there is a risk of rent inflation. There's no fixed payment longer than the term of the lease.
Sure.
So at the end of that 12-month lease, rent can go up. Not necessarily. A lot of that's market driven, but I mean, taking it back a couple of years, when we were in hyperinflation back in 2020, into 2020, 21, beginning of 2022, we saw that the whole United States saw the largest rent increase the country has ever seen. And those rents jumped a lot. Because I had rentals that had to stay market competitive. Because someone's been like, "Oh, that's your landlord's being greedy." But no, I'm gonna tell you, if you don't stay market competitive, you will get the worst tenants in the market because if you don't continue to be the average and where you're the median high of what the best rents are, if you become the cheapest rent in town, you will get the cheapest renter in town. And so I'm just pointing that out for anyone getting into real estate, that it's not a greed thing, it's a business thing, because you're running a business and you want a clientele that's going to take good care of your home. And so there is a magic number that helps you make sure that the person's going to take care of it.
I want to add to that, when calling all of these people, that I didn't do it as it was very calculated. I prepped an email prior to calling that also had my credit score. It had my like basic debt to income, and I had my last 3 months of pay stubs all connected and said, "Hey, I'm very well qualified."
Very well qualified. You don't want to compete with this guy.
I'm very well qualified. So when you talk to your owners, it's not going to fall on deaf ears. And at the bottom of my email, I said, I will rent before the end of the year. Note, I did this all on December 26th, the day after Christmas.
Yeah. And I mean, today is the 30th and I was helping to move TVs.
And it was the first time I went in the house was last night.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's amazing speed. So again, look at, and now, I mean, I do think at some point, and here I'm gonna kind of back it up and tell a little bit of Will's story, because since we are new construction builders, I know that's probably in a lot of people's minds, like you guys build new construction. Will was going to be building a custom home. He's still going to build a custom home. Mm-hmm. The timing just did not work out with me. I'm a single guy, no kids. I have a girlfriend, but like I said, no kids yet. So I'm very flexible when I can build a home. I'm not in a rush. I can do it tomorrow. Will needed a home like yesterday. Like he needs one within 30 days. So his beautiful girlfriend Lindsay does not have to be going up and down stairs with a newborn, and like I said, so make it easy. So because of that, that was kind of why I had the press situation. We're still going to go back and build it because the bigger incentive of why might go back and build a home isn't necessarily for the monthly cost. It's for the bigger appreciation play that people who build professionally can build extra equity into their home. And then, with what the laws are, as far as if you live in a home for 2 years out of the last 5 years, if you're single and unmarried, you can write off $250,000. If you're married, it's $500,000. So there's a huge play that you can do every 2 years if you live in a home. Mm-hmm. But like I said, the circumstances of Will's situation, anyone out there might be in the same one of like, hey, they're in a press for time. Should they do this? Because they have an expanding family, and I think for Will's situation, that this was the perfect play. But kind of going down on some more pros of owning, and then I'll let you bring up the cons of owning. So some pros of owning: equity and appreciation. Your money works for you long term.
Yeah.
And that when you but again, you got to buy it right. So I'm kind of
gotta buy it right.
I'm gonna kind of put in the caveat to the pro there. Fixed mortgage payment locks in stability even at a higher rate. That is a very good pro. Knowing that you got this number locked in for as long as 30 years with standard U.S. mortgage, that's a pretty good feeling. A lot of people talk about the rates. Here's just something to remember that we've had steady inflation ever since the creation of the Federal Reserve. So it's probably never going to stop. Probably going to continue. And if it does what it's done, for the last 100 years and continues the next 100 years, it's going to be the same thing. So would I rather pay today's a dollar back today or a dollar back in 30 years? Dollar back in 30 years, no problem, because the spending power goes down and over time. And so like I said, you get an advantage, that way because of the fixed payment. And then, probably one of the biggest advantages of owning real estate is the tax advantages. Mortgage interest is a write-off, depreciation. you get to deduct, and then there's a lot of capital gains exclusions. Well, what are the cons?
Man, you know, something that I want to start off with is
Okay.
I love doing deals. I love searching for deals, even if it's renting. And even from our first episode, I was house hacking leases. That's how I didn't have enough money. I didn't get money. I was in college. I just happened to have a decent amount of credit where I could qualify. And then I had a job in college, and I was able to rent by the room. Um, but I love being able to know that we own some land and that we have deals that are going to go forward. But something that I hate seeing are my neighbors that are. Um, let me finish the whole sentence. I hate seeing my neighbors that are having to be forced to sell their home. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. No, I love my neighbors. Sorry. I was trying to figure out how I wanted to say that. Like, I hate seeing my neighbors having to sell their home because of unknown costs. And that's why I wanted to talk about the cons. So I'm going to use a real life situation, which is also an active litigation that's happening with one of the largest production home builders that's currently in the market. In the last 2 years, I've been able to capitalize on these production home incentives. Now, this is for a lot of times utilized for first-time home buyers, or you can use a conventional with a lot of buyback money. The thing I haven't enjoyed is 2 years ago around this time, a little more than 2 years ago, when I bought the first rental, I noticed next door to me within about 4 months when the change of taxes happened, which it also affected me. I don't know how long they had owned their house because I bought the last house in the subdivision, and so I got a really good deal on it. I could look it up in the tax record, but what I didn't like is that when you're doing a new development, and this is something, and I preface that of having the land, when you have raw land, you have very low taxes. And when you are prepping to put together a subdivision, your tax assessed value is still prepped on raw land that's being improved upon. Now, if a large production builder can build a subdivision and complete it within one tax year, it stays as the vacant land going to be improved. So what that means is, and I'm trying to speed this up, I hated seeing my neighbors being forced to sell, or one went into foreclosure because they were sold on a mortgage payment, which is consistent. Yes, they locked that in, but taxes go up each year. Now, generally they don't spike, but what's happening all across the country, and there's a large litigation because it's not clear at the closing table, is, hey, this is not being unimproved vacant land. It's now improved new construction that's valued and appraised at X, and this is what you paid at the closing table. The city or the county, they want their money. They want those tax dollars.
And that's a good point. And just to kind of show people what that change could be, like we have some lots that are, that we pay annual taxes on, like a couple $100,
$100, right?
I'll give you an example. We have a few that I've paid on that were just under $300 because It's usually like 1% of what the perceived value is. Once that home's a $300,000 home, instead of having $300 annual tax, you have $3,000 in annual taxes.
Right.
So you divide the 3,000 by 12, and that's added on to the monthly payment. And so that extra $200 to $300 a month, sometimes enough to break somebody.
Well, yeah, using that example, we're going like it'd be $25 a month compared to $250, right? If you multiple a 10 times multiple. Well, $25 is, maybe I'm not grabbing coffee as leisurely. That's pretty easy to get $25. $250.
I got a week of groceries.
That's a week of groceries. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I realized I was saying it very, very slowly, but I was trying to articulate how I wanted to say it. I hated seeing my neighbors have to force sell their homes. And one actually, which just happened a little while ago, had to pay at the closing table because they went in with a like little to no money down to close on the home, and then they sold it for about I think it was $16,000 less than they paid for it 19 months later, which in Florida that doesn't happen. So or not often, especially if you're buying like that. So I felt really bad, but they were in a position where they were going to be foreclosed on, so they had to slash a price all the way down. And so something else that hurts, which I felt it as well very recently, is that also brings appraisal values for that neighborhood down because someone had to was at a point where they were forced to sell. So I say all of that because those are we're talking about cons, and those all recently happened right now. And I actually am noticing that right now in this townhome. I'm seeing a lot of rentals, which luckily the rents are doing very well. They're like $2,000 and above. So no one's selling, but I'm seeing a ton of for rent signs, like all up and down. So I've got 6 active in this neighborhood. And luckily I know someone that wants to rent this. But I was like, that's super competitive. I have 6 in the same exact townhome neighborhood. So guess what? The person just on the next street over, instead of charging 2,000, there's at 1,950. So now
Right.
it's going to become a competitive rental market.
And you brought up another con that I wanted to bring up is and this is a con of ownership. And this is a con of ownership when you got to exit. On when you can't choose your exit time is a potential value volatility. So like if you're just forced to sell, this year right now, well, you got to deal with whatever the market conditions are right now.
Right.
And real estate's, I say real estate is one of the best investments you can make when you're planning it for a long time. When you're thinking about investing your money for decades, real estate's great. But if it's like anything, if you just gotta, if you don't have a choice of your exit date, it can be really bad though. Typically if someone buys at the low of one cycle, or we'll just say the high of one cycle, and maybe the low of a cycle or two down the line, there might still be enough appreciation where they're not actually going to where they'd still be making money. But if you're, like I said, if you're in some of the situations Will's talking about, that's when you become to prone to the volatility of the market. And then on top of that, the other con of it is, it's harder to relocate when you own your home. You can't just leave, unless you have the ability to get it rented. But there's a lot of people that don't have that ability, or don't don't manage property, or don't have property managers. So that's tough. So yeah, no, I mean, I think that's definitely on the con side. Definitely things people should consider, before purchasing a home.
Yeah. So when do you think I should rent, or when shouldn't I rent? We've kind of gone over the pros and the cons. So.
Yeah. So I think you should rent if you're wanting to move within the next 1 to 2 years. I think you should rent. If you don't have enough savings for closing costs and or repairs, just keep in mind, if you have a new home, the odds you having needing repairs are very slim. Can still happen. But homeownership, has maintenance. I mean, I'm in the home right now that I own, and luckily that I got mine at a good time. I got mine with a low down payment. It was 5% down payment, and my monthly overall expenses is definitely cheaper than I can rent for. So like I'm in a good zone, but it's my house. I have wear and tear and maintenance. I got my there's a section on the back side of my house where the soffit's sagging a little bit. I got to decide how long I can tolerate that before I got to fix it. It's a maintenance issue that I do have to take care of before I move out and rent it to someone else. And I mean, there's other little things like that. So now, I would say you probably want to own, if you plan to stay more than 5 years. You can afford to buy and hold long term. And when I say long term, where you can definitely just kind of hold indefinitely and then just sell when it's great. As long as you don't have any pressure to sell. Again, I think real estate's a great thing to purchase. And then you want to build equity, passive wealth, and or house hack. And Will was a house hacking pro. So I mean definitely, yeah, I think those are definitely some situations. But there's definitely no one size fits all. It's about your timelines, goals, and cash position. What do you think?
Because like my example is, it was total. If we would have done this episode, literally, I'm not even joking, last week, I would have had a totally different story. It would have gone a different way. I literally, it's such a drastic change. It's kind of like a whirlwind. But I was calculating, and I was getting a lot of sleepless nights because I needed some certain things, right? So talking about that specific situation, and I was probably doing the numbers too much, but I wasn't at a point of like analysis paralysis. I would just kept like adding more things, and I'm like, okay, if I do this, then this, and then I could use this money for this, as opposed to doing this and this. And that's why I really enjoy not only our business partnership, but the friendship that Sam and I had, because I was like, my mind was running a million miles an hour, which it normally does. And then it was like, I was like, on super crunch time, I said, Sam, I just got to talk this out. Like, these are all the things I'm thinking about. And he probably was like, holy cow, slow down. Like, you're going crazy.
No, but it's like, once you start talking to me, it's like, once you basically told me that down payment you're going to have to bring, I was just like, that doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't make sense. Yeah.
Better off renting.
Yeah, because I was still
Bill's a savvy investor. He makes more than the S&P when he invests in the stock market. He's a 20+ percenter.
I try. But yeah, so that's why I was like, okay, we can use this money in a better way. So, but yeah, it's all about the situation. The only thing about ownership is that it is a big decision. It's a big decision. It's a lot of times it's going to be your biggest purchase of your life. And I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes you need to do the extra homework out and be confident in taking good advice from other people, but then also doing enough research, because you have to understand the way that the system is built. Like, it's someone's occupation to sell you a home or to list your home. And they need to guide you, and they have a fiduciary, reason to say this is a good investment. But sometimes they might not be breaking things down 1,000 different ways like I am. And so, when I'm over analyzing a situation and then I look back at it and I make the decision, I'm like, okay, it was worth doing this. Or whenever we're doing actually, let's talk about the land deal right now. That we're trying to work the numbers. The numbers make sense, but our initial investment is so heavy that Sam and I'm like, dude, let's just talk about it. This is a raw piece of land, which means, and it's not cleared, and it's thick timbers.
Yeah. When he's saying raw, he's meaning there's no sewer, there's no water on site. You got to do septic. You got to dig for a well.
Well, yeah, it's like a really big.
Now, keep in mind though, to highlight before we get into those things, because it sounds like we're talking about stuff out in the country, which it kind of is, but it's a real premium neighborhood.
Premium.
I mean, when I say, the cheap houses are $750,000. Like the bottom line of the bottom line house be like $750,000-800,000 in this neighborhood.
I just sent one to Sam that just closed yesterday on the 29th for $819, but it was built 6 years ago. And I'm like,
not even a new house, right?
Right. And I was like, holy moly, they're getting over $350 a square foot. Like, this seems awesome. But when we started breaking it down, I can't tell you how many times I've done all these numbers. I'm like, oh my gosh, okay. Well, the problem is we have an existing survey from the last person that closed on it, but you need additional surveys, and you have to see where the drainage flows, because you're going to have self-retention on your lot, or you're going to have to drain towards the road. And if you do that, you're going to have to bring a ton of fill dirt. And so what does that mean? So that okay, we might get a good, a decent price on the lot, and then the after value is there, and there's a ton of comps. Luckily, there's a lot of building going on in there. But to get to that point, we might spend double what not double. We might spend the same amount of lot improvement cost as the lot that we're getting itself, the parcel. And then I was like, oh my goodness, like that's a lot. And with the thing, if you're interested in building a new house or something like that, those improvement costs don't really go into your financing costs. And a lot of people get stuck with lots like that way. They're like, oh my God, I love this. It's so awesome. Holy cow, it's $80,000 to even get started. I just paid $100,000 for this lot.
Most people out new construction is you got to kind of be cash heavy going into the front side of it. You get a lot back on the back end, but the front side. So yeah, no, I mean, and that's where we just kind of we run the numbers, ran the numbers and realized like for what we've been doing, we can pretty much use that same capital and probably do 3 deals with the same
3. Yeah.
And not have to worry about the potential of having an extremely premium home finished and then have carrying costs on the back end of it until it sells.
And this is where I wanted to wrap this whole thing and why I wanted to talk about it, because the way that we're creating our plays currently is we have multiple exit strategies. We're able to buy the dirt, get started, get it rolling at a place where we could, if we needed to, hold the property and do a cash out refinance and own it where it still cash flows. And what that means is now we're owning these rentals.
And to be really clear, when we do our cash out refi, because of how Will and I buy so aggressively, we have all of our money that we came out of pocket. We have all of it back and then some upon the refinance.
Yep.
So when we hold the property as a rental on the back end, we have none of our dollars invested in it any further. If we lost the property tomorrow, we literally wouldn't be losing anything because we had all of our money back that we had at the beginning with. And that's the BRRRR strategy wrapped up into new construction.
And what I want to talk about this episode and why I was kind of talking about the land and the way it works is that it's a renting mindset and an owning mindset there, and we're combining them. But if we do this bigger deal, there's no way that we can rent the property for the amount of money to cover the loan. So we're just out hoping that it sells. Now I do feel confident because there's a lot of active things, but it's just like we lose that additional exit strategy. And that's not really our core business model. And so we talked about a lot of it because this is actively under contract. Like we have 17 days to close or until our due diligence period's over. And Sam and I talked a lot. We hung out Friday, Saturday, Sunday, today. And we were talking a lot about this because it's a big deal, but it kind of drastically changes where our business model was going. And what we like is have multiple exit strategies where we can touch both. We can own or we can rent, and we can we see the benefits in both. But being able to be flexible has given us a new strategic goal, I would say. And I just love that this episode was about the benefits of renting and the benefits of owning, and we're able to have a business model that kind of caters to both. So now it's like we can choose what's going to be best for our business moving forward, which is something cool. So I wanted to kind of tie that into the end of this.
Yeah. No, and then what I'm gonna feel with is, and like I said, I think everybody, when it comes to renting versus owning, I think people do have to look at themselves. You can't look at what your friend's doing. You can't look what your neighbor's doing. You have to look at your finances because no one works your job, walks in your shoes, has your bills, and knows what you have coming in every single month. So you got to look at all that and make your own personal decision that fits for you.
Except for Sam, I pretty much tell him everything.
Yeah. we might know each other pretty well, but like most people, you gotta make that decision for you. So don't try to keep up with the Joneses. Don't buy a house just because your friend's buying a house. Like I said, make that decision personal. But I think it's always a good decision to own where you rent and rent where you own. So
totally.
If you buy rental property that cash flows, is going to appreciate, you'll pretty much never go wrong with it. And then if you can rent a home for yourself and then be mobile, it's like I said, as long as you have the cash flow in real estate, it can pay for that. And the part that Will glazed over in the beginning, but he still talked about, is that his rental is going to pay his rental that he owns is going to pay for the rental that he lives in.
Thank you for clarifying that, because it isn't necessarily a net zero, but it's like I'm getting double the house for $200 difference.
Yeah. Basically, yeah. He's renting a town. His renting a town is getting $2,000 a month for that, paying $2,200 for a much bigger, better home. I might crash over there sometime. I mean,
come through. Yeah, we have the room. You have your own little wing over there.
Yeah, so it's great. Yeah, like I said, so like I said, I think that's kind of where I want to end things with. Like I said, is you can never go wrong buying with cash flow real estate where the numbers work. You know you're in an area with good appreciation, and you know you have that steady cash flow. And then, like I said, don't put yourself in a bind, by being in a house that that's going to cost you more. Because the one thing I want to point out, and this is misconstrued across everywhere, is a personal home that you live in is not an asset. Assets pay you and appreciate in value. Your home that you're living in. Everyone talks about the price they bought it for and the price they sell it for when they move out, but no one brings up all the repairs.
I gotta replace the roof, my HVAC,
exactly.
Insurance that I pay every month. Oh my God!
You don't make nearly as much as you think you did. Versus if you would have had that money in a investment account, earning 10 to 12% a year.
I completely agree, and because there's so many factors that go into owning a home, and I'll be completely honest. If I wanted to get started to buy a house, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get pre-qualified if I've never bought one before.
100%.
I'm not speaking for Sam, but I know he's savvy. Anytime I've ever bought a property, I was qualified for hundreds of thousands of dollars more.
Bro, speak for me, because that's been my whole play, my whole life. I've always been qualified for one thing, and I've bought probably 20 to 50% under that.
The reason I wanted to bring that up is that Sam said something that
helped me get into 3, 4, and 5.
Exactly. Yeah. I just experienced something that created a hiccup, but now I know how I need to list everything, how I need to lease everything, how I need to run independent businesses for everything. I learned a lot through this little process of how to structure, how to properly take essentially security deposits, and it's separate in an escrow account. Like, a lot of diligent thinking in the rentals to where they are a business. But the only reason I was able to get those is because I didn't max out what I could have bought. Like Sam does very well, and he's super humble. I do okay. I've got a couple rentals, but I could have just bought one big house and then been done with it. But instead, I knew that there's a sense of delayed gratification. And he said, don't keep up with your neighbors or keep up with the Joneses. I really liked that. And I wanted to point that out, that both of us are speaking from experience. Like, we could have bought the big sweet house, but you guys know the numbers. I could have bought a cool house for $130,000. I knew in my mind
it was about a $500,000 house.
Sorry. Yeah, I could have put a down payment of $130,000 for a house that I would still have to own for 30 more years. Or I could actually use that money for 2026. And
exactly.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and usually for us, I mean, if we buy a lot, we're probably going to double our money in it. That's even probably being conservative.
If we were pretty calculated. So,
yeah. So I'm just saying 130 in Will's hands, I mean, conservatively will equal 260 by the end of the year.
Yeah, definitely.
That's not everybody, but I mean, that's because we are in the thick of finding real estate deals, and building. I mean, like we got 5 builds going on right now.
It was pretty cool. We were talking to one of our lenders, and they're like, "Oh wow, you guys are doing a lot of deals. What's 2026?" When the lender calls you and asks you what your next year business model is, like that was kind of cool.
Yeah. They're trying to make a special package.
They're right, trying to make a special, but still like you're doing a deal flow, and you have things in the pipeline where it's like, hey, I think you're going to do some more stuff. I need to be prepared for it.
Yeah. No, definitely. Well, man, before we wrap this up, like I said, I'm gonna finish out with a few tips for listeners. So get pre-approved, to understand your buying power if you want to buy a house.
And don't max it out. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
no, I agree. I'm totally glad you brought that up because honestly, that is truly one of the biggest reasons I was able to progress in real estate, I think, so quickly was because when I first got pre-qualified, I was pre-qualified to buy a $300,000 home. I bought a $165,000 condo. And guys, I bought this condo at a really great time in the state of Florida. I don't necessarily recommend buying them now, but it's a great time in a vacation town.
We don't recommend buying condos.
Don't recommend buying condos. Like I said, this was back in 2018, different time period. But yeah, so I bought that first one. The short-term rental cash flow was over double what my costs were. That's awesome. So I lived in it just long enough for me to be able to use the loan I used to buy it. Moved out, short-term rented it. That one paid the mortgage on that along with the rent for the crappy little townhouse that I rented. This was the ghetto, but by me moving in that, I was able to save between my job, that rental, and that. I was able to save and then get my second beachfront condo. Again, not recommending condos. This is just what happened in my life. Again, got it at a great time. Yeah, got it at a great time. I actually bought that one I put it under contract right before they announced COVID. It was under contract when COVID was blowing up and they shut down rentals in the state of Florida. I used that shutdown to negotiate a 5% discount while it was under contract. Still closed on it. 2 weeks later, they opened rentals back up, and then the values jumped like crazy. I doubled my money in 20 months on that house, and started flipping. Rest is history. And again, the reason I was able to get that second one though within 2 years of the first one was because I stayed within my means of getting it. And that's something else cool to remember, that, just because you can go get the big expensive home, go look at if you should, because again, if you tie your money up in that home, that money is not earning what it could be earning for you if it was invested, in the stock markets, or in cash flowing real estate. Or, like I said, there's just a lot better things to, be invested in if the goal is to have your money grow. My goal, and just so people know what my goal is, and so you can understand if you want to, keep listening to me, because I think Will has a very similar goal, is that we want to create real estate that cash flows, that pays for our lifestyle. So we want to make sure that we're putting as much of our active income, all the money that we're working hard for, we want to put as much of that to work for us, and then live only off of passive income. Once we can make the passive income be bigger than our active income, and where it completely engulfs it, that's when work becomes optional. And that's the big reason why you should kind of stay within your means until you have that passive cash flow build up, because then you get to decide if you do want to go to work that day. But anyway, then let's see. So I told you guys tips for leave: get pre-approved, run your rent versus buy calculators with real local costs. Again, this changes up market by market. What I experience here in Pensacola is not the same thing that happens in Miami, even though we're in the exact same state. So it's your city by city matters. Factor in more than just the price: time horizon, career goals, risk tolerance. And I mean, I would even factor in, like I said, before you're doing it, your relationship and stuff like that.
Because, What does your family future look like? That's a big one.
Big one,
because if you're buying a 2-bedroom, if you bought a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and you maxed out on what you could qualify for, remember, one of the cons was being able to move, relocation. Now, it doesn't even mean necessarily relocating because you got a new job across the country. It could be like relocating because you need more room. And I actually see that more than like, hey, I got this crazy job in LA or Dallas or Chicago, and so I have to move. It's more like, hey, we're having another baby. We thought this was it. We need a bigger house. I mean, if you talk to a majority of real estate agents, that's a niche of people, is like helping people find the next bigger house. But a lot of those turn into contingency deals. And it's like, oh my gosh, we found the house that we really, really love. It's only contingent if we can sell this house that we're currently in, plus all this other stress. Now we got to show it all the time and do all of this other thing. So that's a good point.
Definitely. But guys, if you're stuck deciding whether to rent or own in 2026, shoot us a message. We can help you break it down based on your goals and maybe even find a creative strategy that works in this crazy market that'll work just for you. So guys, I appreciate everyone listening to us on this episode. Anything you want to say before we close it out, Will?
No, I think this is good. I mean, we're always super honest. So this was, we gave you real numbers that are like 3 days old.
Some of our episodes are we do love having our high level investor episodes, but this was a great one for someone in kind of a beginning phase, someone in a transition phase, and someone who's just trying to figure out, like I said, if renting or buying is best. Because there's a lot of information out there, pros and cons of each. And the truth is, there's not a one size that fits all. It is an individual choice based on the numbers at the time, based on the market at the time, based on your personal circumstances at the time. And so, like I said, if guys have any questions, whether it works for you or if you just want to, like I said, shoot us a message and talk about your personal situation, we do have a lot of creative strategies. We have some ways you can make offers where you don't have to bring quite as much money to the table. Will has experience where he rented rooms to help offset his expense. So like I said, and he did that as a renter. You can do that as a homeowner. We have another really good friend who's been on the show who he has 3 houses that he rents by the room that he owns.
So awesome.
Yeah. So again, there's definitely ways for you, but we appreciate everyone tuning in for this week of the Elite Real Estate Podcast, and we can't wait to see you guys next week.
Sam, where do I find you?
Oh man, forgot to sign up. So you can check us out at the eliterealestatepodcast.com. And that's our website. Shoot us a message there. We are actively looking for land deals in Escambia County. We are fully focused and locked in on Escambia County. That is Pensacola, Florida, the greater Pensacola area. So if you have anything around here you want to look at, please shoot it our way. For all your building supplies, check out my buddy Will over here with Dufresne. He is
helping a lot of investors right now. We're getting a lot of investors. So
yeah, and he can pretty much help you with everything you need from ground up construction.
And I can help you with the build. I've been doing that a little bit, going out to job sites.
Yeah, he's very, very helpful on the site side. He's basically helping customers all the way from South Alabama to close to Panama City. So if you're anywhere in this Florida Panhandle region, South Alabama region, give us a shout there. And then if you guys are hungry, need some help.
I'm hungry. I know
Come
where I'm
see
going.
me at Clean Eats. We got healthy meals ready to go. We're cafes, so you can just come in, dine with us. Or if you guys are busy on the go, you get our prepared meals. They're great. You keep them in a cooler in your car. You can run into a gas station and microwave them. Or if you work out a desk job, just heat them up right there. And so, like I said, great for you. So, like I said, if you need any food, come see us at Clean Eats. Need building supplies, see Will at Dufresne. And guys, come see us on our website or check us out on YouTube. And we can't wait to see you guys next week.
Yeah, and like Sam said, we're focusing on land deals in Escambia County. Look out for 2026. McClellan buys land. We're really excited. It's going to be a new business venture. We're here to help. I was just on the phone today. We're helping out some clients with some lot evaluations. So let me know how we can help. And we're excited. Check out EliteRealEstatePodcast.com. See you next year.
See you next year.